Hey, hey, welcome back to the show, the big show with Ostick and Jordan, where we talk about chapters from the abridged Golden Bough. Today, we're going to be looking at chapter 24, section 2, Kings Killed When Their Strength Fails. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Great.
It's
I'm glad
awesome.
it's, yeah. This is a morning edition. I've got to, I'm going to be a little sleepy doing this because I've got to burn off my sleep supplements. So the two of you might have to carry a little water for me. But I want to go around to these different images here that are on the title card to intrigue those who may want to stick around beyond our discussion of section 2. We have a bit of a synchronicity here. You know, one of the main things that inspires so many people to study the Golden Bough is the claims, and I'm not sure they're verified. This gets into some pretty mythopoetic understanding of the nature of reality. I don't know exactly how you do verify this outside of internal resonance. That the Kennedy assassination was inspired by the Golden Bough, or perhaps mapped or scripted according to it. This is the theory that's put forward by Downard and Hoffman, and has gained a lot of traction in conspiracy circles. I do not subscribe to it, though I do find it super interesting. There are elements of my own take that perhaps assimilate some of their views, but ultimately, as I've stated many times throughout this series, I believe God is in total control and that we're looking at a type of archetypal psychohistory produced by the Unus Mundus. That's my own personal theory that I'm going to continue to develop today. But what's synchronistic about this all, when I set out on this, I had no idea the timing of the chapters. And, and yesterday was the 62nd anniversary, I believe. Do I have, Ostick might need to check me on the math there, of the Kennedy assassination. And we are going to be talking about the chapter, the sections that perhaps most map to that event as it is portrayed in conspiracy culture. So I did not intend, my focus is the Apollo missions, but as I do this analysis, it gets more expansive. We've talked about the Trinity test being involved in it. And I think I figured out where the Kennedy assassination fits in this mythologem unfolding. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I specifically want to focus on the Solar King imagery that is associated with Kennedy and some of the archetypal resonance of the symbols that are associated with Jackie here in the last photograph of them together, one of the last photographs together. So specifically, I want to look at her roses, and I did a last minute little analysis of her dress that is iconic. I will also continue our exploration of the symbolic imagery and resonance of Walter Cronkite, given that he was one of the main mediators of the Apollo information on CBS News. I'm going to look at the CBS logo. That's why I have this Vesica Pisces down there, but we're also going to be looking at this really unusual event. Well, I mean, I don't want to say unusual, but symbolic event of the Apollo astronauts visiting the Pope in October after the Apollo 11 moon landing. We're going to look at the archetypal significance of birds, specifically the owl and the eagle. I want to go deeper into our analysis of this alchemical rebus that keeps popping up in our exploration. Specifically, I want to look at the square and compass and how it is part of the Apollo missions and what those things mean spiritually. And lastly, I want to do a follow-up of the idea that the Apollo missions synchronized with the Aquarian Age. And I did find that there are some people who believe that the Aquarian Age began on February 4th, 1962, which lines up quite well with the timeline. Now, for those that study Jung closely, Jung did not think that the Aquarian Age began in the early 60s. He didn't really put a date on it. I think he said it was any time between the year 2000 and 2200, but there would be like this destabilizing shift that would happen prior to that. So this is not necessarily a Jungian interpretation, but there are individuals who do think it happened on February 4th, 1962, and I want to look at the reasons for why they think that happened. So those are going to be the subjects we're going to cover today. If those interest you, stick around. What do you think, guys?
I would love to emphasize a sentence you said: archetypal psychohistory based on this undus mundus, or based on the undus mundus. If you're
Unis
new,
mundus.
oh, thank you, I'm messing it up. But that phrase alone really is what this is all about. I mean, the 50 plus hours of stuff we've recorded. Finally, Luke, you've kind of arrived on, and I know you didn't come up with it yourself, but that is what this is. So if those words are new to you, no worries. Like, it is so much to go back and watch all of these videos. But I think if you can define those terms for yourself, all of this will kind of click into place, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, the archetypal psychohistory is something that I borrowed from Edward Edinger. And he's the one who, unbeknownst to me, he was doing similar sort of work with the world wars. And he developed a lot of Jungian alchemy to apply to what I'm calling our collective dream. I have no idea if I'm doing this Jungian analysis correctly, but I have taken it from the individual and applied it to the collective, because that seems to be what's going on here. And Edward Edinger seemed to have done something similar. I'm just doing it with the Apollo missions and those attendant events, such as the Kennedy assassination and the Trinity test. The name that we originally had come up to it, apart from Edward Edinger, was hyperassociative mythic mapping. They might be two different things, but I like both of them. We're going to have sweatshirts made at some point. Osik, what say you about all this?
I'm very excited for the second half, basically. I was also wondering, like, how much are you willing to give credence to the thesis put up by Mr. Hoffman and Dr. I don't know what his name
Downer,
is.
Downer.
Shelby Downer.
Yeah, Downer, yeah. Yeah, like, is it too different? Because I was studying that book yesterday. Like,
Which
for
one?
this
King Kill?
presentation. I mean, yes, exactly like that. It was about the killing of the king ritual and
Yeah.
linking it with like Masonic things. So I was wondering, like, how much are you willing to give it space, or is it possible? Like, do you care about it?
I like the analysis. Whenever I like their ability to pick out the symbolic resonance of everything, but ultimately, whatever group they want to pin it on, whatever conspiratorial group they want to pin it on, I think is subsumed by the movements of God. So I think it's a step removed from the ultimate cause. So if you want to say like, oh, the Illuminati or the Jesuits or whatever group, although I know that's not their thesis, are doing that, I think who, even if it were to turn out there were some sort of conspiratorial cabal that were behind things, I think they are just an extension of God himself. So it's not really satisfying to me to say this shadowy organization did X.
It's plausible to me, though, that people are leaning into it. You know, for example, if I know the solstice, the summer solstice is on a day, maybe I'll like lean into it and spend the day doing things that are kind of symbolically in alignment with that, or just enjoying the moment. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's totally possible that there are some individuals that are aware of what they're doing, but I don't think, I think that's only half the story, because there's so much here that I see that is being superimposed upon the reality by a force outside of it.
what do you think, Ostic?
I mean, that's fine. I don't really want to push against this worldview because I'm not even subscribed.
You're entitled to your own perspective.
And just pressure test things, because also I think King Kill 33 is super compelling. I think all that's there. I think what Luke is saying is he's interpreting the data points. I think are pretty solid in many cases. You know, maybe if we went line by line, we'd find some. I don't know, but it's more about, okay, like what larger framework can you know, we're talking about theories like in physics. You know, like we have all these data points. Which theory best encapsulates all of the data points at hand? And I think they're not even mutually exclusive things. We're talking about different dimensions or different layers of a phenomena.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I don't think it's exhaustive. I would say Downer, Downer and Hoffman are not exhaustive enough for me.
But I really enjoyed the book, and I think there's a lot there. And yeah, energetically, I think, yeah, anyway.
Also, if we're talking about 33, one random trivia. So the day that CK was assassinated, so a lot of people asked me like, what do you think, what's happening here? Then I looked up the dates, and it was 33 days before his next birthday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, it's all there. So it's like, yeah.
Well, even his initials are in code 33, don't they? Because C is the third letter of the alphabet. Isn't K the 11th? So
Yeah.
311 is
Yeah.
3 times 11 is 33.
There are a lot
it's
of
like-
parallels between the CK and the JFK.
Right. That's going to be part of this. Is like, are we seeing the killing of the king ritual happen again with
I
the
think so.
CK event? And what does it even, I guess what I'm contending here is like, what does it mean to happen? You know, what I think these things are happening psychically or metaphysically,
Mhm.
not necessarily actually. So, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not trying to do like a conspiracy podcast today.
I mean, we all throughout these episodes, we have talked about how important a king is, how so many rituals are around him to keep him alive, to keep him going, to select someone as a king, and like how the populace is tied to him. So, like, even this idea of a king being killed after so much build-up, so it has to have some kind of repercussions. That is why it is, written as a separate chapter, and that is why it is so effective on the psyche of the people. That is why it's recorded in history books. If it was not very important and people didn't care, people were not affected by it, nobody would have bothered to write all these things down. But they have written them down because there were significant events in their psyche, and it goes to show, like, even if you'll call these things like they are psyops, they are for controlling us, or creating chaos in our lives, but like they actually end up being effective, because what will the
Yep.
posterity record? It will record like this happened and then this happened, and some scientist, like some social scientist, like 30 years from now on would, like, try to pin this thing down. This happened, so this caused this. That's what I'm talking about. It's like,
Mhm.
it's an important thing in the psyche. In
I'm not trying to
narrative
dismiss
we
it.
tell
We
ourselves.
agree. I think we all agree.
Yeah. It's just the level of explanation we're okay with. So I may, if there were no like collective psychological or metaphysical or divine dimension to all of this, and I was completely confined to the political, I'd be more inclined to posit some sort of conspiratorial element as driving everything. But to me, like I said, it's more vertical than the political. So this is I've said this a million times. We are in God's dream. So whatever elements are recruited in order to unfold that dream I'm okay with it. I think all of us are playing a role,
Mhm.
not just a secret society or not just a shadowy organization. Like what we're doing here, I don't want to inflate what we're doing here, but like we have our role in it as well. And who knows what archetypes are coming through me right now in this divine comedy.
You're like David Bowie in Twin Peaks. He's like, it's a dream.
Yeah,
We live
I
inside a
am.
dream.
We live inside a dream. That's the after looking at this information for 10 years, I don't know what other conclusion to come to. Some type of simulated dreamscape. That's what we're in.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, even I started considering this worldview a few days ago. I was thinking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, like, again. So I was thinking, okay, maybe if I do consider this fact that aliens do exist and they are so advanced than us, that they are creating these little milestones for us to, lead our civilizations to. So I was thinking, okay, if there are ants, I put a cube of sugar a bit far away from them. They'll start, clamoring on themselves and travel towards it. So I started thinking of humanity in that way, that people are keeping sugar cubes at different places, and they're waiting for, to so that we can progress to another level,
Right.
and then
It's
be able to reach the sugar cube.
meant to be discovered. Yeah, it's an intrusion into our plane. You know, what I think the thing with the conspiratorial stuff is people are like, "See, I'm so smart. I've unraveled the total conspiracy." It's meant to be unraveled. It's meant to be discovered, right? Like there are so many errors like baked into every conspiracy thing that you could think of. Either men or God has purposely built errors into it so that it can be discovered, so that you then can go through this escalation of consciousness. That's my 2 cents. I mean, look at any conspiracy topic. It's replete with errors that are with the slightest attention to detail you will discover. It's like the sugar cube. The ants will find it eventually. They'll pick up on it. So, anywho, let's get into it, okay? I think the chapter can be we can get to the schizo stuff here pretty quickly. Jordan, if you want to progress to the next slide.
You got it.
So, I mean, we can just look at a couple examples. I want to look at potentially a Jungian application of all this and an understanding. We're already sort of jumping the gun here, but I don't think we need to go through all the different examples. We've all read this, so feel free to correct me if I'm selling it short. But essentially, the idea, and we've looked at this throughout all the other chapters, is that the king has to be the loci of all of the the entire universe for all these different tribes, right? And he has to be in full hearty and vigor of his personality in order to maintain stability, to make sure the crops grow, to make sure the rain falls, make sure there's no plague or pestilence, that everything is maintained. And there's all these different strict rules. We've looked at it in Japan, we've looked at it in Africa, it's all across the world. Okay. And at the slightest hint that the king starts to show signs of mortality, right? Gray hair, lost teeth, sickness, whatever the issue is, almost universally, all these different cultures, in one way or another, decide to put their king to death. They can do it through poison, they can do it through hanging, they can do it through suffocation. And I think what is also pretty consistent across all these different cultures is that this isn't a disrespect for the king's life. If you were to reinterpret it, it is the utmost care, because ultimately they see the soul is something that is transmigrating, that is going from king to king to king to king. And what they need to do to make sure some malevolent force doesn't carry off this soul when the king is in some sort of depreciated state, they need to kill him early so that his soul can then progress to its next body. So his untimely or timely death, depending on how you're looking at things, is absolutely essential for the preservation of his soul and for the preservation of the community at large. And we can pick any one of these. I don't know if there's one that's particularly interesting to you. I don't know, Jordan, if you can go to the first slide in the series here of these different rituals. Let's see here. What do they have in Ethiopia? They have the god kings, and yeah, what's the one with the hanging one? I thought that was the most interesting, where they would there was one, it might have been the shalaks or whatever they're called.
Here you go. It's Ethiopia.
Oh yeah,
Sudan.
Ethiopia, Sudan. That's the one I'm looking for. So there was this tree that in the Fazakal had, Ethiopia and Sudan, and if he was not able to sit under this tree for 3 days, they would then have a noose with razors in it, and they would hang him from this tree that he was supposed to preside under. And this was to maintain the cosmic order and restore it when his soul gets progressed to the next one. And we could go on with this. It's pretty much the same throughout. I think last week the thing that was particularly interesting was just the fact that people were okay with their gods, their god kings, being mortal. How an unusual concept that is to us in the West. Maybe it's something that's more relatable in the East. I'm not sure, but in the West, the idea that a god was mortal to begin with where that idea even comes from. There's been so much abstraction in philosophy that if God is God, he cannot die. And also, you have this from the Christian influence where even when you kill a god, he comes back to life and comes out of the grave, and how unique that is from a Christian perspective. So I could go on, but I think this is the general gist of the chapter. Do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I think you see this playing out right now with transhumanism. You have this elite class who believes the body decaying is a problem, and to work around it. I mean, we're talking about in these ancient rituals, or not so ancient, this passing or this migration of the soul from one decaying body to a new, more pristine body with more life force in it. The transhumanists are selling this idea that you can achieve the same thing through technology, which I'm personally very suspect of, but they're doing the same thing.
That's interesting. That is interesting. And presumably this won't be available to everyone, but maybe it will. I don't know if you've ever seen like the you have, I know you have, like the Next Generation with the whole Borg, like you will be assimilated, and the idea of like being like in a, like your consciousness being uploaded to like this like data center, and like that sounds like total effing hell to me, to have the entire chattering of humanity. It's like inescapable Twitter all the time, though I love Twitter.
Yeah, you see it right now too. That this blurs into a whole another, I think, branch of philosophy. But you see what's being sold right now is sort of a cheap joke of this technology. Oh, upload your likeness into this thing so it can live on forever. The grim, we've discussed this already, but the grim, like, oh, you can reanimate your dead loved ones to come speak to you.
I've seen those ads recently. Like people are like interacting with avatars of like their grandparents and stuff like that.
I think that people are mentally ill. And I think people are doing things that are way more akin to magic than they want to admit.
It's like it's necromancy of a sort.
Right. Which you and I are going to differ on probably how we view that. I don't categorically think it's a horrible thing, but I think this like trying to achieve it through the technology is really dark, because ultimately who controls that? Not God, not the divine. I mean, yeah, zoom up enough, right? But like you're getting distortions, right, in between the divine and your interaction with this entity, whatever it is. To me, it's not connected to life. But yeah, I think transhumanism definitely is playing off of this tendency or this desire to overcome the decay of the body.
Yeah.
Which there's other ways to do. Like that's what's weird and hilarious and frightening as well, is there are other paths that don't require us like giving over to the Borg, giving over our beingness and our consent and our will to a centralized control grid.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, bring this back to like the political, and the Downer and Hoffman stuff, where they say that this killing of the king ritual is what happened to Kennedy on 11/22/63. It's like, okay, is the idea then that like his spirit went into Johnson's body, like, because we have the succession of presidents lined up, or did it like, a lot of people think, in the conspiracy community, a lot of people think that like Jimmy Carter was like JFK and he like came back around or something like that. Like what do we think? Like, if this is the explanation, I don't think it's like that really works. Now, I have an explanation that I think it is going to work on an archetypal level, on an ego dissolution level when we look at the Apollo missions. But like okay, let's say like JFK was killed in this ritual. Where did his spirit go?
Is it even about the spirit, though? We're getting into territory where we're speculating about the true purpose or what the perceived mechanism of this energy transfer is, which I'm not sure we can really discern. You could just view it through a loose lens, right? You could just view it through a we're going to do a mass ritual. And in fact, many of the rituals in the Golden Bough do not require the actual event to occur. It's just the appearance of the event,
That's
even
so
though
true.
seemingly
That's so
people
true.
know. Like we're talking about the birth canal rituals. Like nobody actually believes this grown 30-year-old person is being physically reborn. And yet they like pass the person through the cloth of the woman to simulate this birthing ritual.
That's
So
true. Like
it
in the
doesn't have to
next,
be real.
yeah, that's true. I think in the next chapter they talk about how they'll have stand-ins. Like the king's like, how about if I just make this vagrant king for the day and then
Yeah.
we kill him? Right. They start, and then, as things modernize, there are the scapegoats and the effigies and things like that. We haven't gotten too much into that, but this gets into this. A lot of people, don't think like JFK even died that day, that it was all stagecraft. And then this would get into the idea of it being some kind of mannequin or something. So, not trying to be conspiratorial, but here it's happening. What do you want to say,
This
Austin?
is unavoidable. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So
It is
thinking
unavoidable.
about, so thinking about these things, so what I can speculate about these particular tribes and people is that they live in a very vibes based civilization because it's so paranoid, they're paranoid that, oh, king might lose his vigor, so there's also something about his wives, they rat him out. It's like, oh, he's not doing his duties properly, so we gotta kill him off, he's not his best self. So it's like it's such a paranoia, and these they have such fixed ideas about what a king should be, and like what it means to lose his power and vigor. I mean, there's a reason, but like the lived reality, it's pretty insane. So I thought about this quote from Gene Wolfe from Shadow of the Torture. So it says that we believe that we invent symbols. The truth is that they invent us. We are their creatures, shaped by their hard defining edges. So that's what I feel about these things. So it's like
I 100%
people
agree with
have,
that. Love that
yeah,
quote, by the way. Who is this person?
Gene Wolfe. He's a science fiction writer. He wrote a book called Shadow of the Torturer. But like this quote resonates with me time and time and again. So I kept thinking about this when reading this chapter. So it's like it's such a vibes based, such superstitious kind of cultures, like not even real. But then I think about real life counterparts. About I think Freud picked up about totem and taboo after reading about this chapter. I think that he said that people gather up and kill the the tribe leader, and then that's killing of the father kind of thing. I think Freud picked up from this chapter. So I keep thinking about it in terms of real life scenarios. So one real life scenario could be that the father is too reluctant to lose control and like give over control to his son, or like he's not properly transitioning. So what happens if he has children, they do not obey him, they do not properly individuate themselves or properly carry forward his legacy, the empire crumbles down. You have seen this in so many movies that it happens when during if that transition is not performed properly. Even in the movie Inception, the main focus is that this guy, he should break away from his father. This is what they're trying to accomplish through that whole movie. So it's not that he's referencing Golden Bough or anything. I'm talking about this particular transition period. That is why I think they recognized how important it was for the stability of the society, that this transition should go in a very smooth and particularly dramatic fashion, so that anyone who steps in knows that we mean business. So it's like that kind of, I'm just riffing off upon what I'm gathering from this information.
Sure.
So that is what I wanted to say
I
about
love
this.
that quote, by the way. The symbols invent us. That has become the perspective that I have.
So what I hear you saying there is like to apply it to the JFK situation, it does create this clean break and transfer of power that might be messier. It might be muddier if allowed to play out. Like these rituals kind of allow almost an instantaneous for the group as a whole to shift like, okay, we're having faith in this one leader. Now we are completely moving all of our focus and attention to this new leader without this like messy transition period. Is that kind of what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
I was not thinking about JFK. I was thinking about fathers in general or like parents in general. But even thinking about that, it's such a monumental event in American history. So people, they might, you could not even conceive of this thing happening. So it's like happening in broad daylight. It's insane. So it would have really affected people in a very emotional sense. And I don't think even Jackie would have known like this is happening. I'm not saying that people, they knew they're transitioning the king or something. I think they were themselves in a very vulnerable period. And it's like you create order out of chaos. It's like it's the ultimate way to create chaos, and then you can, sweep in, make these changes, make rearrange in the background, and then present a new front. Oh, now we have, solved this problem. This is the new president, Mr. Lyndon Johnson. So it's like that. I think it's like creating order out of chaos kind of situation during these transition period. I think even the clip Dr. Luke sent us, he talked about that. So it's like these are like monumental events that completely breaks the psyche of the whole populace, and then it attracts attention there, and then other things are happening behind the scenes, and particular rearrangements happen, and then suddenly we're going to war. Suddenly it's happening now. Suddenly $2 trillion are missing. Nobody cares. So it's like these kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the psychic harvest is huge, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And yeah, there's a lot to cover. So why don't we jump to the slide that Jordan is on, and maybe just to contextualize it and get my bearings a little bit. Jordan, would you mind reading that quote in the top right-hand corner from Jung?
Yeah. Meaninglessness inhibits fullness of life and is therefore equivalent to illness. Meaning makes a great many things endurable, perhaps everything. No science will ever replace a myth, and a myth cannot be made out of any science. For it is not that, quote, God is a myth, but that myth is the revelation of a divine life in man. It is not we who invent myth. Rather, it speaks to us as a word of God. The word of God comes to us, and we have no way of distinguishing whether and to what extent it is different from God. Just kind of what you were saying, Ostic, what you quoted. There's at least some overlap.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do here, gosh, there's so much to cover. So I do want to highlight this paper that I came across. I don't know if I can pronounce this woman's name, Martina Krzyzanska or whatever her name is. She had this paper that she wrote in 1991 as a PhD student, which I highly recommend everyone checking out, called The Sacrifice Ritual and Process of Individuation, Analysis of a Model, where she talks a little bit about the killing of the king ritual and its relation to the psychic movements that Carl Jung talked about in the individuation process. And I think last time I started to explore the idea with JFK and Marilyn Monroe that there was something about like the alchemical marriage that was happening here that predated the Apollo missions, which we've, I think pretty well proved are about the alchemical marriage, but they seem to be sort of avatars of this. And Jordan very perceptively pointed out that perhaps Jackie and Marilyn, since they're so associated with one another, could be two sides of the same coin, perhaps the light and the dark side of some sort of lunar archetype. And going a little bit deeper into Kennedy as like a slain solar king, though this is not necessarily what Martina talks about in her paper, but I think in some ways we might be seeing something about the if this killing of the king ritual is going on with the JFK assassination, it speaks to something about the dissolution of the ego that is preparing us for the reconciliation of the opposites that are going to happen in the alchemical marriage. So we have that mythical pattern running parallel to, let's say, the Jungian pattern that's happening individually, which I'm extrapolating and applying collectively, where we have the mythic pattern of the ritual killing of the king, who is killed to prevent the decaying world order. And ultimately, this leads to the transition and the successor. Whereas in the Jungian pattern, we have the ego self, we have the death of the inflated ego to prevent stagnation, and ultimately about reorganizing the self and bringing in this union of opposites. I'm going to expand it, and we're going to talk a little bit about this expanded imagery. But so in a way, and I have here in the bottom left-hand corner, when I have the Kennedy assassination next to the Saturn V rocket, it's like the movements of the world soul, of the world anima. The only way for that to happen is to create, you must destroy. For there to be this archetypal psychohistory, this movement of the world soul, is that there has to be this harvesting of psychic energy in order to move things forward. And that this cycle is limitless. It goes on and on and on and on. And I don't know if the Trinity test, the Kennedy assassination, Apollo are all one cycle, or Apollo is its own cycle. But it seems to me there's a lot of these interlocking mythologisms that are pointing to these three events being connected. And possibly, Osik made reference to 9/11. Perhaps that cycle starts again, and perhaps is continued by COVID and other issues. So that's what I wanted to say about this slide. Let's get some commentary from you guys.
I'll start this time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting from what you talked about is an image, and an image is like a plane on which these structures are being born. This is the shape of the father, this is the shape of collective unconscious, things like that. I'm just thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's happening in the external reality of the world, like whatever ego death, or this is what's happening, that these particular archetypes that we talked about, they keep emerging again and again. Even if we destroy it, we cannot get rid of them. They grow on like weeds. So it's like they are being tinkered with in a way, and then certain things are being pushed into the world. So there's a consciousness change, is what I'm thinking. So
yeah,
I think
that's kind of what I'm going with here, is that if JFK is a representation of the solar principle, that is dissolved in order to bring both the maternal and the paternal aspects together in the birth of the Philosopher's Stone, which might be the cosmic consciousness that we talked about as emblematic of, say, like the Earthrise photos and the blue marble photos that occur at the end of the Apollo missions, the end of Apollo 17, at the end of Apollo 8.
Another thing, I mean, you can continue with this, but another thing was, I was thinking independently of this, that why do so many people believe in astrology? Like it's not very intuitive to like believe in astrological things. That, I mean, I got into astrology because I thought like these evil people they are into astrology, so I need to catch up with them. So to think about like where it's going. So that's what my gateway into it. But in a way, I'm thinking like, if you're trying to create take such a risk here, and as we talked about, that they are trying to align it with some sort of symbolic events, and they're trying to code things into it. Not they, I mean, you take God, whatever is happening, it's a loaded event, whatever is happening. So I'm thinking like, because there's so little control that they personally have, that is why they are these you will often see rich people, they are the more susceptible to things like astrology. They're thinking like, oh, what will happen? Maybe actors, the people that do not have actual tangible control, they do not handle tangible things, they live in a distance. So I think that's why they believe in astrology. That's why this speaks to them in a better way. I'm talking, is it relevant to this? But I'm thinking about like people not having a connection to the material world, or like connection to concrete reality. They have to rely on astrology because they have so little control, and they try to make their things real. in a way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I, if
This
they're
is an
actually
aside.
trying, yeah, it's fine. I mean, if they're trying to like actually line up events like this and make things happen, what do they think they're trying to accomplish? What is the control that they're trying to extend? Is this, we see, I think we've kind of shown that the Apollo missions really effectively brought about this collective oneness. I don't really know what the world was like prior to 1972, 1969, because I hadn't been born yet. But I think there was a prevailing sense of, let's call it globalism, up until relatively recently with the introduction of Donald Trump, who made populism and nationalism popular again. So, but majority of my life, it was all about like, we are one, right? Um, why would so many powerful people who have unlimited financial means all get on board with that, unless we're going to like posit that like they're all answering to Satan or something, and like Satan wanted them to do this, to introduce like global communism or something? I don't know. Is that the idea?
I mean, it could be neoliberalism.
Yeah.
Like there's it's about with American politics, international politics. It's from my perspective, I see it as hegemony. So I think they say these things like we freedom and everything, but they don't really mean it. They're like, if you're nice with us, we'll deal with you, whoever you are. So I mean, it's not about that. I don't. You talked about like what their end goal is. What I'm thinking is like they don't even know what their end goal is. They are trying to create a break, as you said. Like you talked about a timeline break happened in 2001. So they're trying to create some sort of break, like even if even in our body how it functions, like we do not have explicit controls over it. What our body does, it floods in hormones in ourselves. So hormones, they do not have like specific control over every part of our body, but
Right.
hormones, they affect us in some way, that to act as to make us act in a certain way. I think that is what they're trying to accomplish. From a societal point of view, they're trying to create, these financial shocks, okay, this consciousness shock, okay, this health scare, people stay apart. So they don't know what's going to happen next, but they're trying to create change. And then trying, it's like you're trying to herd sheep and you have certain things, and then they're herding dogs, they're trying to bark at you from other sides, and then you're like walking somewhere. This is what I imagine happening. It's like different herding dogs, they're trying to bark at from all sides and trying to maneuver us somewhere. It's like that, maybe.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, that we're seeing that right now with like these Epstein file things, right? Like, you see, it's so obvious, right? Like, it's like back and forth. Like one side in America, like one side of the political spectrum is like, oh, we got to do something about these Epstein files, release the files, and then it switches to the other side, and you can see like this psychological manipulation going on in the public about who's going to own who, and then you got to think about like a dialectic, like how is this hurting the sheep? Like it. I mean, I don't. I'm actually being more conspiratorial than ever today, but it's like, we're sure any of this is real?
Well, it's the anniversary weekend of one of the most famous, well-known conspiracies. So that makes
it's
sense.
like conspiracy Christmas right now.
It really is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's 12:40 almost. I mean, we've got a lot of slides here. Jordan, do you want to say something? I mean, we're not going to be done with this. I've got 2 more slides at least on JFK, so we can keep going with it. But if there's something specific you want to say here, Jordan.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on the points you made about astrology. And I think in some sense, your analysis seems like it could be correctastic. And I would say if you look at the roots of astrology, it really is born out of a personal experience of connection with the real material world. When you look at the development of astrology, it really is about being intimately connected day in and day out. And in the most basic form, when you think about demarcating time, seeing how the moon shifts over time is huge. Like that's really where a lot day and night is going to be the most primal, way of seeing time. And then the moon is kind of this like next level of it. But I can see why you would say when you start getting these really complex systems, especially like the deeper you get into, lots and all of these more complicated ways of calculating different astrological alignments and timing that go beyond something that you in your day to day can truly experience. Because some of these cycles we're talking about are 3,000 years. You as a single human cannot experience that. In a way, you are depending on mathematics and people's theories being correct.
We do have astrology as part of this presentation, BTW. It's the
We
final
do.
slide. Yeah, it's that
Amazing.
February
So we'll
4th.
get back to it.
Yeah, we will. And also it makes just to add this on, we probably need to be taking astrology more into consideration, because ultimately what I'm talking about with this whole thesis is going to the stars, right? Going to the
Sure.
moon. Like, I haven't talked about astrology enough here.
Probably. I mean, it's everywhere. And the roots of astrology, what astrology is. I mean, that's a big topic. Jung wrote a lot, not a lot. Jung wrote some on astrology, and he really just scratches the surface. But what he does say is it's kind of this expression of time. Like, what is time really
Yeah.
needs to be investigated
For
before
sure.
really even considering what astrology is, because astrology seems almost like, we talk about these I always mess up the word G- the gem myth.
Gematria, gem myth.
No. When we're talking about like the more higher level of an archetype expressing itself through these different mythologem. I really need to work on that word.
It's okay.
Because it's a good one.
Yeah.
I think astrology in a way is a version of a mythologem of time, right? There's other ways we can get at this idea of time. And even with the CK stuff happening more recently, like we're seeing the cycle play out again. And I do think there's a lot of power in seeing these patterns and being able to situate ourselves in them to maybe see where the collective is going. But at the same time, it can also become a liability, because just because something played out a certain way in the past or at a different level of consciousness doesn't mean it's necessarily going to play out the same way. But we do project into this dream. So as you get everybody to project a similar idea into the dream, it can manifest. So I don't know. I'm really going off the deep end here, but I wanted to bring up those points, Asta, because I think in a way you're right. Like some of these people are very disconnected from the material world, but are they really? Like, are they maybe in some way more aware and more tied in because they're actually studying these cycles and things? And also, planets don't have to be round orbs for any of astrology to be true either. So, like, I think it's a very fascinating technology that has been used for thousands of years. There's something there.
Yeah, for sure. I would argue that it works better if you don't think about them as round orbs.
I think so too. Thinking about them as spiritual bodies has a lot of merit in my mind. But
all right. Can we go to the next slide? 513?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're great. You're great. Okay. I've hinted at this before. I'll be kind of quick about it, but I found this Canadian silver coin that was done to commemorate the Apollo missions. And I mean, look at this imagery, right? Like it's the ascended JFK in the clouds talking about his commitment to the moon landing, etc. I mean, this is absolutely wild that this was portrayed in the mythic consciousness of society, and it's easy to see how all these images would be associated. And what I guess I'm trying to get at here is there does seem to be some sort of interconnected narrative between the Trinity test, which we've talked about as being like the fall from the Garden of Eden, where the apple was partaken of that gave us this carnal knowledge that caused the fall. And then we needed some sort of intermediary. We needed we needed a Christ-like figure in order to ultimately restore us back to Eden, which seems to have been in some ways about the moon landing. That ultimately, because we've looked at this mythologem of Adam and Eve in some way manifesting itself in the moon landings. Like think about all the references to Genesis, right? Like even in Apollo 8, when they took this image called Earthrise, which in itself seems to be like kind of a code for the rising or the resurrection of earthly consciousness, right? Even then, they read the very first chapter of Genesis. And a lot of flat earth people pick up on this as like some sort of disclosure about the firmament in the dome and that outer space is all fake and all this other stuff. But on a deeper level, it seems to be hinting at the Garden of Eden. And I think what we have here, again, is I think we have JFK as being this slain solar king whose death, real or not real, is perceived. And we have this psychic loosh that is harvested in order to transmogrify the collective consciousness into something that approximates the Garden of Eden, which we feel like we lost in maybe at the Trinity test. Maybe that's when, and the consequent Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. But these seem to form a nice, tight little narrative of fall, mediator, and redemption. And there could be a lot of elements that I'm overlooking here, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. And what do you guys think about this imagery? And like I said, or in the previous slide, when we look at the blue marble and the Earthrise, I mean, this is the Philosopher's Stone. This is the Christic Stone where we all are one.
I don't know why in my head in the past when I read about the Philosopher's Stone, I was not seeing a sphere, but it makes perfect sense that it would be represented as a sphere. Well, a mandala, and what are qualities of the mandala and the sphere, the equilateral distance from all the individuated points to the center. Yeah.
What do you think about this coin, this JFK coin? What do you think about I feel like I'm taking drugs right now. All the stuff we're talking about, right? Just look at this. Like I can't imagine if I actually did drugs, like how I would interface with this reality. Like I feel like my mind is melting looking at this. Like JFK in the clouds with the rocket.
Why is that?
It's so surreal to me.
When did they make this?
Was
it after his death?
Yeah.
It's like this funny, like cartoonish version of heaven. Like JFK in the clouds, like yeah, it's fun.
Also, does this not trip you out looking at this coin? I feel like I'm on LSD.
Why is this so funny to you? I'm like, okay, he died, he's in heaven, now he's watching over us. It's like that meme that you watch the skies, I watch the grounds.
Yeah, I guess
like
it kind of just points to him being this Apollonian god figure. Like I guess it just fits so well. Like it like you can be like, oh, Luke has such apophenia or pareidolia or whatever it's called. But like if someone's like, if someone's like, Luke, you're seeing connections that aren't there, I just be like, you look at this coin and you tell me that this isn't going on.
I think the reason it's funny to me at least is,
you find it funny too. Okay.
I do. Like, I think what's funny is like we minted a bunch of coins, like physical, they're not dollars, but you know what I mean? Like we minted coinage, money with this. It's just, it puts you back into all the rituals we're reading about in the Golden Bough, or these ancient civilizations and the different symbols that they put on their money that they thought were really real, to see it manifest in the modern era in a quote, like logical Western culture such as America. It is weird. Like it's trippy. It almost transcends time for me.
Right. Well, it's like we're stepping outside of our tribe and seeing it objectively, right? Like and at the time, this would have seemed like totally natural. There are other coins, and look, there are all sorts of coins that are minted everywhere. There's like, this is a Canadian this is Canadian money. There's all sorts of, I don't know how it works. Jordan probably knows more about this, but like different mints in America can make special coins or whatever. There's like Trump coins and stuff like that. But like there's like Catholic JFK coins where they have him on one side and then they have like the resurrection, or they have the crucifixion on the other. Yeah, I thought about including it, but it's like, you know, I'm trying to exercise some discipline here where I'm not just grabbing on to every little piece of evidence to prove my point.
But that takes it even further. Maybe you're going to cover this. I know you've talked about it. It's a fractal of the same crucifixion story, which ultimately is an alchemy ascension story. So that's insane to me, or not insane. That's fascinating that there is a coin in existence with crucified Christ on one side and JFK on the other. Like they're both examples of this same mythologem. I'm practicing.
Yeah, there you go. And by the way, I'm probably going to say this at some point, but the whole Adam and Eve thing, they're kind of considered to be the first, or not the, I should say, they're considered to be an expression of the alchemical marriage. The Adam is the first king. He is the solar king. So you can see how it partially explains why you would see the Adam and Eve narrative take place on the moon with all the different references to Genesis and the first man of Neil Armstrong and the Eva trips that they do. And what else? We talked about the lemon or the golden apple on the Apollo 1 capsule is the forbidden fruit. You know, it makes sense. I hadn't really thought about Adam and Eve as being the alchemical marriage, but they are. I mean, and it corresponds to everything else that we've looked at with Jack and the Beanstalk and the Tree of Life and the Serpent and Mercurius. Like, they're all just expressions of the same archetypal movements. And I guess the thing it tickles me so much about is like, it's undeniable. When we've looked at so much of this imagery, I think it kind of proves the reality of the archetypal psychohistory. Now, is it a bigger question? Why did God build the world in this way? Why does God seem to have a template for our dream? Is that a reflection of God's mind? Or did God create the template and said, this is a good way to make reality. This is a good way to make my consciousness. Like, I'm like, oh, is that the book that I do after this? Like, what are we, or can I just leave this alone?
I mean, now I can see why you guys were finding it funny, because I was myself tuned into this, you know, I was myself associating him. Like it's obvious, like, okay, if I'm living in that time, it will be very natural to me to, you know, associate these two events in a very sentimental way. But now looking at it from outside, it can be a bit jarring in a way. So it's like if you look from 2000 years in the future, like Jordan said, those symbols that we think, oh, why are they connecting these symbols to him? Is it a god? It's like, you know, it's very natural for these things to emerge in our reality. So it's like, it's nice. And it's not that people are actually talking about it very verbally. It's not that we are being taught it at school. Okay, JFK, he is the Christ figure, he was that. It's like it comes naturally to people. It's like people see it and they do not question it. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That clocks, you know. It's like it's an unsaid kind of mimification that if you know, you know, and people know, they accept it. That's what I found out.
I don't, you know, there's another element of this whole, there's a lot of JFK stuff going on right now. Like I put it in our chat here. We'll look at it when we look at the next slide on JFK, but like, JFK is like all mixed up with this like QAnon stuff in America. Like a lot of people think like JFK like might still be alive, or JFK Jr. is alive. And we just had like Marjorie Taylor Greene like step down, and she was like associated with the QAnon movement. And a lot of people are like, oh, is this, and she mentions the 5D chess, and QAnon had this whole thing where they pray to JFK. And I remember going through the Q boards back in the day, but they talk about saying a prayer in the Q boards, like whoever Q is, and they talk about praying to JFK and like activating the beam of light. And so this whole JFK mythology is like we're not done with this. This is like still going on. Not to mention like the intermeshing with Kubrick, because now all this Epstein stuff is coming out and they're like, oh, see, like the Eyes Wide Shut stuff was real. Not to mention like there's another Kubrick reference in here because Epstein had the Lolita Express. So we've got 2 films of Kubrick's mixed together with this Epstein character. So it's not going away.
Did you know about Larry Salona thing?
Lucky Larry Silverstein?
No, Larry Salona.
Oh
C-E-L-O-N-A.
yeah. And Eyes Wide Shut, and a
That
lot of
as
people.
well.
He had like
He was reading a newspaper.
Yeah, the newspaper says lucky to be alive, and then he's the one that breaks the news about JFK Jr.'s plane going down, and no one really knows.
He breaks the news about the Epstein thing, and the article he wrote is that that a model he died and it was an overdose. So it's like very like people are not actually crazy or like normie to pick out this stuff. I think that they can see parallels with actual reality and what's written in the newspaper.
Yeah, like, that's right. That's another connection to Kubrick. We haven't even talked about like the high strangeness of 11/22. We haven't even talked about like all the people that die. Like overshadowed with JFK's death is also the death of C.S. Lewis and Aldous Huxley. And then later, Anthony Burgess, the writer of Clockwork Orange, dies on 11/22.
And Scatman Crothers as well.
Yeah. So it's like, what's going on with 11/20? Yeah. And then we get the 33 again, right? So 11 plus 22 is 33. So what? And this gets back into the astrological conversation, right? Like, how is the astrology of 11/22 dictating who dies that day? I don't know.
Yeah, like, what were you saying? I become hypnotized when you talk. So it's like watching TV.
Thank you very much.
Suddenly the TV talks back to you. What do you think? I'm like, oh, okay, I have to say something.
Well, yeah, it is a little MK Ultra-y when I show all these disparate images and provide a narration. Yeah, it's kind of
it's like you set up a narrative. I'm like, oh yeah, it's true. It's like, what do you think? Oh, okay. Then I get shocked.
That's funny.
So yeah. So what were you saying before this? I forgot. Like, where were you?
I said a lot. It'll probably come back out if we go to the next slide. But
yeah, sure.
I think I said something about Adam and Eve being part of the alchemical marriage, which we're going to get into here. So I made a last minute addition. Jordan hasn't seen that I brought in the line of purples here, which is a very profound concept that I highly recommend everyone checking out. So I as I was thinking about all this JFK stuff, I was meditating on some of the imagery that's involved in the JFK assassination that's perhaps overlooked. A lot of people talk about Jackie's Chanel dress and its meaning, but I think through this alchemical lens, more is making sense. What particularly brought my attention to this were the roses. I've never really thought about her roses. And man, is this like highly symbolic. Apparently, like the roses were like a last minute addition. She had, wherever else she had gone, she had received like yellow roses or tulips or something like that. But at the last minute, she got red roses, which is like so bizarre. I think, and then I started thinking, well, there's so much like rose stuff associated with the Kennedys. Like there's like Rose Kennedy and there's the Rose Garden. So this rose thing, I was like, this rose matter. And this is the last photo that they had, like the real nice photo that they had before he was killed. And you can see the roses there in the back seat of the Lincoln, the blood-covered roses. And I got to think, I was like, that is deep. Blood on roses. And I think what we're looking at here, I think Jordan, if you can zoom in on some of this slide, there are roses that are involved in, well, first of all, it got me thinking about Rosicrucianism. And it also got me thinking about Jung's commentary on the alchemical text, the Rosarium Philosophorum. And sure enough, in the alchemical marriage, you do have them, at least in this scene that I have on the side right there, Jordan. You see that the sun and the moon are unified with these like braided roses, not to mention the rosy cross of Rosicrucianism. So if in some sense we can talk about JFK and Jackie being instantiations of the solar and lunar queen, that is ultimately that they're ultimately dissolved and reunited in some way in the Apollo missions. You can, yeah, there you go. That's great. You can see the roses there, and then also you can see the roses in the on the rosy cross of what's his name, Rosenkrantz or whatever his text is. I forget. So I think and also the roses, the blood on the roses in some ways signifies both the death and blossoming. So when you have blood and the roses together, you have the sacrifice on the material plane that is also showing like this ascent and this growth towards a higher dimension. So you have like life and death, these opposites mixed together. So I think that's a really important thing. And Jordan, if we can go back to the slide, I know you got a lot going on there. But yeah, you can see the rose here on the rosy cross. The rose is being associated with Jesus Christ and his execution. Of, at least from a Rosicrucian perspective, you can understand why these symbols get mashed together with the JFK assassination, given everything else that we've talked about earlier. So now, something else that I wanted to point out here, right before we went on the air, because you asked for an extra 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I in the middle of the night, it had been bothering me about, well, what about her dress? And there's been a lot of work done on this phenomenon known as the line of purples. The line of I didn't prepare too much about it to talk about it, but her magenta dress is kind of at the center of these two poles on the color spectrum of spectral red and spectral violet. And it's not a air quotes real color, right? This is like something that's produced in the mind as a result of how our eyes see different wavelengths of light. And a lot of people use this as a metric to determine like what's real and what's not real in our reality. But beyond that, we see a conjunction of the opposites. Because this is a unification of spectral red and spectral violet, we have two colors held together to produce a secret third thing in our mind. And that is like the conjunction of the opposites of the solar principle and the lunar principle that ultimately have to be integrated in the Philosopher's Stone. So these symbols, the blood on the roses, the magenta dress, the solar king slain, her having a lunar dimension, I feel like we're looking at, and I don't think anyone's ever really pointed that out before. I think we're looking at a forerunner of the ultimate alchemical union that's going to occur in the sky 6 years later. I did not set up reality this way. I don't know why it happens this way, but the pattern is the pattern. And I'm working on it. I don't have all the answers.
I'll give you something to work on. So if you're talking about purple, so I've thought about this. So why is the color purple chosen to be the color for the poster of Eyes Wide Shut? Because I kept thinking like, why purple? Then I realized that purple or like violet, whatever that color is, it is made by the mixture of red and blue.
Right.
So, and then I thought, okay, maybe red and blue are supposed to, I mean, even the theme of the movie is about couples. So I thought, okay, red maybe could be the woman and blue could be the man. It's supposed to be a union of two colors. So it's like it's about both of them because even their dreams are mangled together, you know. And then I thought about, okay, he uses colors in a very specific way. And then I realized that in the opening to Clockwork Orange, we see colors, we see two colors basically. First color is simply a bright red, and then there's a blue color. Those are the two colors we see, and then the title credit starts. So it's I mean, there itself in the opening of the movie, he has established these two colors, but they're not mixed together. And then when you look at the theme of the movie, Like from what I understand, it's like it's a very divided world. There's no harmony between the masculine and the feminine. The masculine is like this pretty rapey kind of and very violent, and then there's a complete disconnect. So that is what I interpreted. Like, why would he show these bright colors? Because Clockwork Orange, it's like a assault that movie. It was supposed to be like when he made it, he thought that it's just going to be assault the audience. He was very confrontational about that movie. And then if you start the movie with a very bright red and then suddenly change it to dark blue, and then your final movie, it's about the mixture of red and blue. Then I thought like maybe it could mean male and female or like whatever this dichotomy you're talking about, the lunar and solar symbols. And then his last movie was about the solar things. From black, it gave light to, you know. So it's like the world being born and the Clockwork Orange is like the dichotomy of the two. I'm just trying to create an artificial narrative out of it, his filmography,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to think like what he might have thought the themes of the movies are, and from his perspective, because he was also tuned into all this stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I do want to add
I
one
mean,
thing, and oh yeah, go ahead. And then I want to get
just
Jordan
one
to say
final
something.
point. And in the movie The Shining, when Jack is sitting typing on a table, he has this very prominent pink lamp. And a lot of people talk about that pink lamp being representative of Jackie Kennedy, and like him being kissed on the head by Wendy is uh, he- like the symbolism of JFK getting shot. So it's like
Yeah.
people talk about it. I also subscribe to that. I used to subscribe to that idea, but it did not lead me anywhere, so I've abandoned that. But like people saw this in the movie, so I'm just trying to bring it out to the attention of someone who's watching, or you, if you
Yeah,
care.
I think I remember watching an episode of Lab Stand where they were talking, someone had like developed this whole theory about how the main atrium or whatever in the Overlook Hotel is about the Kennedy assassination. Maybe it is. I mean, the thing is like, you know, there's so many varying interpretations of what's going on in the Kubrick movies. It makes me like it does give me pause about the type of assessment we're doing on history here. Like, can all those interpretations be correct about the Kubrick movies? Or by me treating reality as a movie, we're going to have all these conflicting stories too. And there's like this is a fool's errand or something like that.
No, I think Kubrick was an opportunist in a way that if he thought he could incorporate something in his movie, he would. I mean, that is the pattern I've observed for him. If he thought maybe I can push it in here, then he pushes it in. He does not hold back. He's not like married to one idea. Absolutely, okay, this movie is about JFK. It's like if I can put it JFK here, I'll put it in. So he's put it in The Shining, the Ullman thing. He is literally a JFK lookalike. He acts
Yeah.
like him, and
Yeah.
then in Full Metal Jacket he's talking about it, and then his movie he's always mentioning the moon and everything, and he's obviously related. He made a whole movie about nuclear disasters and everything, the nuclear holocaust even, and and even that movie is not actually about the new. It's about male and female dynamics, because that's what Dr. Strangelove is about. It's about, you know, what is the main impetus of him not uh, feeling him. He's like, I felt when I was in the act of love, so I could not feel a connection. I thought I had lost vitality. So then I thought, okay, maybe this other thing is happening. So communists have taken over, and then I should, you know, I mean, I don't know if you subscribe to that idea, but in this movie, even if it's a comedy, it's hinting at a basic divide and conflict between the sexes, and how it's not literally the sexes. So it could be this dichotomy that we're talking about here, that it's the lunar and solar pulling apart the marriage and everything.
I think that's totally on the table. I'd have to go back to it. I mean, there's a very famous fan letter that was written to Kubrick where some astute moviegoer was like, "Hey, this movie's about sex," and he's like, "You're the first one to pick up on that." And it becomes very obvious. You know, now, given the knowledge that we have, we went back and watched Strangelove. Is it about the alchemical marriage? We've got a bunch of slides still to go through, and we have to be mindful of Jordan's time horizon. Jordan, what do you want to say about this slide before we go on?
I think we can keep moving. You guys explored a lot.
Okay. Um, I want to say one last thing. The roses are also associated with Christ. They have 5 petals each, which I didn't realize, which corresponds to the wounds that Christ received on the cross. So this, you know, there being and it depends, you look at this on like a mythological level. There's always this talk about Christ being a solar figure, right? He is the son, right, of God. And we've talked about Kennedy having the solar figure, but also for Jung, it's not so simple in the sense that Christ is also the philosopher's stone. He's really the integration of the opposites. That's why he's more associated with the mandala, with the earth rise, et cetera, et cetera. So
I would agree with that. I would interject too, and take it or leave it. This is obviously coming through my own experiences and beliefs based on those experiences. But the rose is very commonly associated with Mary Magdalene. And at least I view Mary Magdalene as the feminine aspect or feminine expression of Christ consciousness. Now, I agree with you. I think Christ consciousness is more about this total integration, but Mary Magdalene would be more of the feminine forward presentation, whereas Yeshua, Jesus, would be more of the masculine presentation. And yeah, roses are abound with her.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about this, because we talked about last time, like Marilyn and Jackie being light and dark sides of this lunar archetype. But, Mary Magdalene might track better with Marilyn Monroe, because I'm not trying to. There's something. They're considered to be disreputable women, right?
Yeah, that's a whole thing. I'm not did want to share. This is something I received recently, and it's artwork of Mary Magdalene, but she has a gold rose and a gold mandala looking symbol behind her. And it's definitely more of like a dark lunar image. Like it's black and gold, which is not how she's usually represented. She's usually represented as like these red and gold. But yeah, it feels almost like a synthesis of the lunar solar in that particular image.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I hadn't really thought about it. Like, yeah, there's a lot more to be mined here. Why is she holding the roses and not him? And we can get into it, but it's undeniable. His blood is on the roses, which is like, right. This is a symbol of resurrection,
right?
Or it's foreshadowing his resurrection. And everybody, when they talk about the Apollo missions, like, this was Kennedy's dream. Like, we're doing it. Like, we kind of were like, why are we doing this? Oh, because Kennedy wanted us to. I don't know. So, okay. Got a great quote that I want Jordan to read here on the next slide, and we just can reflect on it and possibly define some terms. But this is getting back into our study of Mercurius, and this was just, I found this while I was researching for today, and I was like, this is incredible. We've talked about Mercurius being embedded in like 10 different ways into the NASA meatball logo. And obviously the Mercury program, the Mercury 7. Jordan, why don't you read this and we can just have a little conversation about it.
Mercurius, that two-faced god, comes as the lumen naturae, the servitor and salvator, only to those whose reason strives towards the highest light ever received by man, and who do not trust exclusively to the cognitio vespertina. For those who are unmindful of this light, the lumen naturae turns into a perilous ignis fatuus, and the psychopomp into a diabolical seducer. Lucifer, who could have brought light, becomes the father of lies, whose voice in our time, supported by press and radio, revels in orgies of propaganda and leads untold millions to ruin.
My God. That's from Alchemical Studies, page 239.
It's crazy.
It's almost too perfect. It is too perfect. Like, I had to double check. I was like, are we sure? Like, I was like, I had to make sure like my LLM wasn't hallucinating this. It's real. I mean, and there's a lot of terms in here that could be defined, and I've got them all defined if we need to. I mean, it's 1:15, so we probably should keep it moving. And I'm happy to define certain terms if you guys ask me to. I mean, I think the most important thing is the natural light and the dedication to wisdom. But it's this idea that like Mercurius is two-faced, right? He has the staff with the serpents, right? The two serpents together, and with the staff, he can put some to sleep and he can wake others up. And perhaps this goes into our conversation that we had at the beginning of the program, where we talked about error baked in to all the conspiratorial events, right? Whatever you want to, like magic bullets and building sevens and whatever, the mask inconsistencies with COVID, whatever you want to talk about. The proper orientation, if you do not have the proper orientation towards the truth, this force, this archetypal figure is empowered to put you to sleep. And it's also empowered to wake you up. And so I think about it like humanity, there's you put the majority of humanity, you show them all this space stuff and they go, yeah, it looks totally real to me. And like, they're not waking up ever. There's no amount of counter information that will ever
not this lifetime.
No, they are not waking up. Same deal with all the other events. Okay. And what's odd is on some events, they're attuned to it and others, they're not. And they never will be. It's impossible. You can shower them with information. But because they're so badly constructed too, it naturally wakes up those of us who are properly oriented. Like it's meant not for all to be discovered, but the few.
This is cool. I've not remembered. I've read so much of Jung before I understood any of it, and I surely didn't retain it all. I didn't recall him using this phrase highest light, and this is fascinating because that is the explicit verbatim phrase that I and many who I know use when calling upon guidance. Like I'm always asking for the highest light perspective on whatever it is. And I love that he illustrates. I mean, it just makes me take that even more seriously. And, I'm not perfect. There's times I deviate from that, but there's so much distortion in this realm, and the head brain, which Mercurius is very associated with, right? Logic, communication, language. Yes, all these tools give the capacity to ascend, but at the same time, they become incredible traps.
Well, I would say I think you're talking about the lumen naturae, which means the light of nature. I don't know if you're talking about, so that's, and I'm not trying to contradict you because it gets a little squirrely the way that Jung has things defined. I mean, the Apollo is typically sort of associated with like head brain knowledge, and the Mercurius stuff is something that's deeper. It's more innate within the intelligence of the psyche. I think still the substance of what you're saying is correct.
I'm pulling upon my astrological education here. I'm not pulling from Jung in particular. I'm just pulling from like what I know outside of this. But and what I mean by like Mercury rules commerce, he rules mathematics, that's what I mean by the mind. I get what you're saying. Yes, there are larger concepts where like, yes, this gets like deeper, right? Where the line between like Apollo and the solar, and I'm talking specifically about all these games that Mercury is kind of in charge of, if you will. They can be incredible bridges to expansion, but that you can very easily get stuck in them.
We saw last time that Apollo and Hermes have a strong storied relationship with one another too, right? Like the Hermes creates the 7 stringed lyre that he gives to Apollo, who then is like the god of music. And
Right.
in exchange, we have the bees that are given to Mercury for the prophetic insight. So they're very closely related.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like when I say like head brain, I mean like this like more narrow way of interpreting and engaging with the world, not like the bigger maybe divine aspects of like consciousness. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Osik, let's get some feedback from you.
No, I think you guys really killed it. I was smiling so long because it felt it was like a psychedelic trip the way you
It
were
really is.
describing it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like I was like, wow, this is taking places. But when you talk about that Mercurius being hidden deep within, I instinctively thought about, is it related to the spine? Just that.
Mm,
I
mhm.
mean,
Yeah, I
could
think
it,
Yeah,
I
the
th-
I mean,
Kundalini.
it's a staff. If it's, I thought it could be a spine.
yeah, I think I don't have the quotes in front of me, but I think Jung started to play with this idea. He did write about yoga in a few places, and I should make a note. I don't have my pen and paper here, but Jordan, maybe you can remind me later. He did do a little exploration of yoga at some point, and I do think he saw the serpent going up the spine as being connected to this. So,
Yeah,
but
just
I don't know
that
if I could talk
image.
about it more intelligently. Jordan's probably read more on it. So,
I would just say the concept of Kundalini is what that serpent symbol is associated with, going up the spine, up the staff, this
the
energy connection.
chakras,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, and not just that, like that whole system. There's a layer of it that's very biological, very normie, very like tangible, real. Um, there's another layer of it that's a little more metaphysical, but even that process of energy moving between the root chakra or the sacral, the primal, like this gets into alchemy in a big way. That movement of energy through the primal piece, the material piece, like the totally just like uh brute aspect of man to the higher mind, like the crown chakra, or even like above the crown chakra and the eighth and ninth chakras. That's what that like kundalini kind of can be about, is like the movement of energy through all of those. And some people try to like force that, and they have these really crazy, it's like a drug experience, right? Like it can be very disorienting and ungrounding. It may or may not be a positive thing. But there's many things you can go find out there to try to well, you're probably more familiar than we are even in the West, but maybe not. Like it's become kind of popular here, but it is, yeah. Anyway, I'll end it there.
all right. We got 6 more slides
I
in
know
40 minutes. So
a
we
little
might have
less
to,
than 40 minutes, but yes.
okay. All right. So we got to have to go a little bit quicker here. Okay. So in slide 216, so where did this begin? Oh, I mentioned earlier that we were going to take a look at the square and compass of the rebus. The thing is there's so much symbolic imagery that like some stuff gets pushed to the background. I don't even acknowledge it. And then as we decode an aspect of it, it comes to the foreground. And I even foresee probably next time, like I haven't even gotten into the arrangement of the stars on this rebus. Like we've looked at the divine hermaphrodite. We've looked at the Ouroboros dragon that's on top of its connection to the moon, et cetera, et cetera. But even like the position of these other planets, of the 7 planets, and where they are around the rebus. We've looked at the egg symbolism and its connection to the moon. I haven't had time to break that down. I know this 43 also on this winged moon egg thing or whatever we're looking at. There's lots in the geometrical diagram. There's a lot I still got to decode, but let's talk about the square and compass. The square and compass are, again, signals about the unification of the opposites. We talked about the unification of the opposites and the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine, the feminine, the heavenly, earthly. that's kind of what we're looking at with the compass and the square. The compass, from what I understand, is like the spiritual principle, right? That is descending upon and making its imprint onto terrestrial matter, right? So it's a unification, it's a representation of the unification of heaven and earth and the conjunction, okay? And so, something that people say a lot, right, is like, oh, like all the astronauts were Freemasons, et cetera, which is not true. Some of them were. We've looked at, specifically Buzz Aldrin. He took the Masonic flag to the moon. Just because a third of the astronauts are Masons does not make this an entirely Masonic endeavor. Okay. What is interesting about this is that it has the square and compass in it. So to me, that is signaling that the Onus Mundus is recruiting symbolism to demonstrate the alchemical great work that is happening there. Okay. And when you dig a little deeper into it, you look at the NASA logo itself. I never would have seen this until I started to think about the compass. See, that red chevron, which we've talked about it being, like so many people point out, it's like, oh, this is the serpent's tongue that is here to deceive us. This is Satan or whatever. We have these two intertwined serpents that are a reference to the intertwined serpents of Mercury's staff. We see the red and the white. This is a reference to the union of the opposites, the red king and the white queen joined together in a sexual act here, okay? Contained within the blue planet in the background, indicating the chthonic element of Mercury, right? But from another perspective, look at this. That chevron is a compass. And it's creating that encircling comet or whatever, just like a compass would. So we have, and I don't know, I guess the implication that it's being done on the Earth, right? So that would be the square element of it. So within the NASA logo, you are seeing the square and compass. And then this gets into the whole creation of the Philosopher's Stone with the mandala of the Earth image being produced at the end of Apollo 17, the blue marble taken by Jack Schmidt, okay? Like where there's an implicit squaring of the circle that is happening here. And these are symbols of a completely integrated self. You've got the four corners of the Earth, all and the intermixture of earth, air, wind, and fire as it's depicted from outer space. And I guess you could even say that this is a further unification of elements because you have the earth and heaven united in terms of it being situated in outer space.
This is interesting. I mean, is it actually the photo that he took? I don't.
I'm sorry, what?
Is
it what?
Is this the actual photo that he took?
Well.
Of the Earth, the blue marble is purported to be a photo.
But it's also reported to be like edited, isn't it?
Not this one. The one they did in 2012 because
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the one they did in 2012 that you supposedly used with satellite imagery, and it has all these replications in it. And flat Earth people go, see, like it's admitted that this is Photoshop, and I'm so tired of the flat Earth debate. Or you don't. Like, more importantly, is why we're being shown that it's a marble.
This is pretty convincing in a sense. I mean, it's squaring the circle, and now it perfectly fits that image of the mandala that you've created over the right-hand side. I'm just looking at it. I think you guys should continue.
Do you think I could ever convince a normal person that any of this was going on?
No.
You have to prime them with all this evidence. You cannot just throw it. You have to take them on a journey. It's like you have to create a film or a novel for these revelations to actually be believable. That's why people create these films. Otherwise, people would think, oh, who cares? What are you talking about? They live aliens within us? Oh, no. express it in a form of an art or a music, then it hits deeper. It hits the subtle realities, and people. That is how I was awoken. That is how anyone else could be awoken. You have to
which
create this.
which raises an interesting question because like they always talk about predictive programming, right? Like discharging this karmic debt. So that's why all the films have disclosure in them if you know what you're looking for. Like, I mean, how do it, and they do wake up a lot of how many people did they live wake up? How many did Kubrick how many people woke up because of Kubrick movies or Nolan
But
stuff?
if someone's not ready, it's not going to happen. And I've seen like things can happen in front of someone's face in real life and it gets rational. It happened for you, Luke. Like you rationalize it away. I've done it as well. And what I've observed is with art, oh, it's just art. It's not real. So I maybe on a subconscious level, they're taking it in and it's kind of creating a wider capacity to see it. But we're so poisoned and disconnected from the natural world. Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Hoffman talks about this in the book, that why all these disclosures are happening. Then he speculates that these disclosures are being done first that you talked about, to reduce that karmic debt, and then to like, okay, if you've told them, then they had it coming, that kind of thing. That because people talk about that I'm not going to go in there. So just assume that there's a hypothetical group of people who perpetrate these things, and then it is believed that they believe very strongly in God, and then they believe that hell is there. So it's like, if we disclose this to the world, then everyone else is also complicit if they allow us to do it. You know, so it's like in hell it cannot be a crime. So other people also will have to join us in hell. So it's people then talk about they're trying to turn heaven into hell. They're trying to invert the world, things like that. So, but the other thing is that it breeds apathy in people. I mean, in me as well. I realized that I became more apathetic because first I saw, oh, what I have to tell everyone. Then again I saw these things, and again. It's like someone laughing at my face, kind of thing. So it's like it kind of breeds apathy, but then I've now transcended that kind of feeling of helplessness. But it kind of does it, because I've seen so many people get caught up in this cycle of identifying disclosures and then getting there and then nothing happening, and then again a disclosure happens, then they decode it and then they find out something. Then it's like they are in a constant state of paranoia, and paranoia, it sucks all of your energy, I think, in that way.
Yeah, that might be a desired outcome, right? It's like,
yeah,
go ahead, find all the things. I mean, that might be
Yeah.
a psychic energy that is farmed to create these alchemical movements in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the theme of the podcast I just made with Christian.
Yeah.
It's like, so what are you going to do?
Yeah. I don't know what to do. I mean, I just have to, I'm cursed with this knowledge, air quotes knowledge, right? So I have to find something meaningful to do with it. And as far as I can tell, like no one's ever done this. So it seems kind of like my obligation.
Pretty unique.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about disclosure. So one thing I found out was, if you've seen the movie White Noise, there's very, very clear disclosure there. So I don't really understand like what is their intention. It's like, are they trying to wake us up that you can actually predict things before they happen because I can do it, so you can too? Is that what they're trying to say?
It seems like we have some ability to shape the reality. I don't know. I mean, I shared in the chat earlier this Tatiana Schlossberg. They announced that, Jordan, I don't know. Can you hit that? Yeah. So this is the JFK's granddaughter on the 62nd anniversary of his death. They announced that she has I think leukemia. She's dying of leukemia, which is interesting because it's like a blood disease, right? And we talked about blood in roses and whatnot, and most of the, not all, because I did a little Google search right before we went on here, but it's a lot of the press photos that are associated with her show her wearing this color that we've discussed earlier that's associated with the alchemical marriage. And so the timing of, like, why would you announce that on that day? And this is the main press photo that gets put out there. Like, you know, did us prying into the dress, did us prying into the blood symbolism, did that like force this in some way? I mean, I'm not delusional enough to think that, but it's like, what's going on here? I don't know. So anywho, we can go back to the slide, Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
It's a interesting detail. It's like what can you even say? We've had so many synchronicities. It's like,
yeah. Oh yeah, that was a major one. We last time we talked about the symbolism of the USS Hornet and bees, and the bee being a symbol of like an alchemist symbol, because they take raw material and turn it into golden honey. And what, like 3 days later, the USS Hornet is in the news because for the first time in 30 years they're going to move it. And I'm just like, what? Like, what? Who else is talking about the USS Hornet?
Yeah. I mean, are you actually a beekeeper? I figured you are.
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there's bees on the property.
Yeah, but I've encountered, but as I was working on that's another, like,
your dad is.
Yeah. And as I was working on all the slides running up to the presentation before this, and I mean, Jordan was there. Everywhere we went, there were bees. Everywhere we went, there was a different, and it wasn't, we encountered them at Monticello. It was creepy. It was really bizarre. And I had a whole slide on bees and their symbolism. And it was just like we were being followed by a hive of bees.
Why is it creepy? It could be like, you could be like Snow White, like,
I don't have any control over it. I don't have any control over it. And I don't know what it's trying to communicate to me. Like we went to Monticello and we parked right next to a truck that had a beehive, or a hive of what do you call a group of bees? I don't know. A hive, a flock. I don't know what they're called. That had taken up residence underneath the hood. I've never seen something like that in my entire life.
Yeah, that's how could they do that?
And parked right next to it. I got out and I was greeted by a swarm. There we go. A swarm. I got out of my car and I was greeted by a swarm of bees.
Oh God. This is actually a magical world you're living in. It's like you're living in a novel written by a magical realist author. Well, let me mess with him.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. Jordan and I were watching the Truman Show one time, and I drew attention to the parachutists in the Truman Show, and like later that day or the next day, we almost got hit by a parachutist, and it was.
God.
I mean, I don't know if it's just trying to get my attention.
On that same day. Yeah, it was very bizarre that we have never seen them in the area. Like, it's super bizarre. And then some guy on a bike earlier that day or after was like, oh, isn't it like a Disney movie?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the first. We went for a walk. We saw, so the parachutist in Truman Show, like, tries to parachute into Truman's reality to warn him that he's in a fake reality. Right. We went on a walk and this bicyclist came by and said, it's like being in a movie set here. And I was like, that was strange. And then right after that, we hear this crashing sound, and this parachutist, I don't know, what is he, like 100 feet above us?
Maybe less.
Maybe less. He had a what do they call it? He had the propeller on the back, the fan on the back.
Like a fan.
And he almost crashed right into us. So
now I'm fully on board with all you talk about. Your personal synchronicities. I'm on board with them. This is interesting.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say about it. Like, all I know is things that I focus my attention on intrude into my reality. But I cannot, like, I couldn't tell you what from this conversation is going to intrude into our reality, but something will. I can't be like, oh, it's going to be a Mandorla from slide 517. It may be, but oftentimes it's things I can't anticipate. So I don't know if it's trying to have a conversation with me. I don't know if I've hacked it.
If only there were technologies to develop this talent. If only.
I got to listen to Jordan. All right, look, let's talk about the slide, okay?
Yes.
Because I have to deploy one of those technologies in 22 minutes.
Okay. All right, look, we're going to kind of speed run the last slides, okay?
This is crazy, though.
Yeah, this is a crazy slide. So a lot of it's made about the Masonic flag that went to the moon, but I found out through doing the research here is that the Vatican City flag also went to the moon. And if you look at the Vatican City flag or the Vatican flag, it's got this golden key cross with a silver key, and then you have like the Pope's tiara, whatever it's called, which looks very much like a beehive floating above it. And we can go, they say it's like it's got its own symbolism. Look, clearly this is the alchemical marriage again between the solar and the lunar principle that we've all looked at. And the reason why the Vatican flag to the moon is not that big a deal is because they took 130 other small flags. It wasn't like Buzz smuggling the Masonic flag up there. So it's like one of 130. And the astronauts, they went to the Vatican. They gave this flag to the Pope and some moon rocks. And in return, he had them in this audience hall. And in return, he gave them like this tile and with the Magi, the three Magi on it, and said, hey, the astronauts are like the Magi. The Magi followed the star to the creator's birth. You guys went to the moon. See, get it? Like you're the same. But when we look at this, the alchemical marriage, it's whether the Pope knew what he was saying or not. Like, let's look at the deeper layer of the symbolism that the Unus Mundus might be orchestrating on some level here. If the Apollo missions were about creating cosmic Christ consciousness, the Philosopher's Stone, whatever we want to call it, in a way, they really are like wise men Magi that were going to the moon, following the birth of this savior. Okay, so it's more than just like, hey, isn't this interesting parallel? Not to mention, the audience hall that the Pope had them in at the time has this painting behind them, which is so relevant. It's called, I probably need my glasses here. Jordan, can you zoom in on it? I found the painting. San Fresco El Prato Resurrection from 1499. Okay. And why this is important is that this is Jesus coming out of the Vesica Pisces, right? And this is like Jesus coming out of the cosmic womb. Okay. And this Vesica Pisces figure is often associated with these two circles creating this part in between, right? And you can see this, the sun and the moon are perfect circles. Despite what modern cosmology tells us about the sun being like 400 times further away and 400 times bigger than the moon, they're the same. They're the same size, okay? When you look at them and you don't have that cosmological background. And when they overlap, they create this Vesica Pisces. So you have the alchemical marriage of solar and lunar creating these preconditions that allow the Christ to come out of it, okay? And the fact that he's comparing them to the Magi in this audience hall where you have the Christ being resurrected behind them. This is like insane. And it's not just Christ that's shown in these Vesica Pisces. Jordan's got this other one here. It's oftentimes the Virgin Mary. And this connects back to some of the discoveries we've made earlier about how Revelation 12 seems to be playing out on the moon. The 12 astronauts being the 12 stars above the woman who has her feet on the moon and the sun at her head. This again is the alchemical marriage. You have the merger of the sun and the moon, and then you have this mandorla where the virgin or Christ is coming out of her. Do I think some secret society is like, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to give the astronauts this plaque with the 3 magi on it, and we're going to pose you in front of the mandorla painting, and they're going to give you the flag with the rocks and the stone and the alchemical principles on it. I mean, what? Unless there's like a computer somewhere doing this. Not to mention also the Vesica Pisces is where we get the fish. So that's kind of where we get the Piscean imagery from, too. That fish comes out of the Vesica Pisces. I mean, it's in the name, Pisces. This is why part of the reason for why you see the Jesus fish on the back of people's cars and stuff.
This is totally beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful elucidation that you have done till now. So it's like, hats off to you. This is very pretty, and that's all I have to say. I'm like, this gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
It just, one thing builds on another, and it just starts flowing. And I go, is that connected? Is that like? So it just kind of, once you start kind of tugging on it, it just all kind of starts emptying out. Jordan, do you want to say anything about this, or should we move on to the next one? Thank you, Ostic. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we could keep moving, but I love it.
Okay.
I love these paintings.
Okay. I'm going to have you do a little reading. I wanted to do some deeper, so I made a big deal last time about the Kennedy giving the moon speech at Rice University. Just deeper into the alchemical symbolism there. Jordan, could you read this entry? I highly recommend everybody get a copy of the Penguin Dictionary of Symbols. It is invaluable. Jordan, will you read that first paragraph?
Yeah. The owl is the bird sacred to Athene, goddess of wisdom, and shares the goddess's attributes. A nocturnal bird, related to the moon and unable to bear sunlight, it is in this respect in sharp contrast with the eagle, which gazes directly at the sun. Guénon observes that in this particular may be seen the relationship of the owl with Athene, Minerva, symbol of rational knowledge, perception of reflected, lunar, light. By contrast with intuitive knowledge, direct perception of solar light. This is also perhaps the reason for the owl being the traditional attribute of seers, symbolizing their gift of second sight, exercised by their interpretation of omens. Athene's bird, the owl, symbolizes reflection, which rules the darkness.
So think about this. He's at Rice University. Their mascot are the owls. He's got the eagle on his podium. So you've got the reflected knowledge of lunar consciousness hovering above the stadium, right? Like that, with the contrast it with the direct perception of intuitive knowledge of the eagle who is staring right into the sun. So you have a solar bird and a lunar bird associated with each other in this moment in history, right? So they're kind of extensions of the alchemical marriage. And maybe this is a stretch. It's at Rice University. And as you can guess from this GIF that I've posted here, well, what do you do at a wedding? You throw rice. And I was like, now that's one of those things that someone could be reachy about, but and rice, okay, what we've looked at this through our early study of the Golden Bough. Why do people throw rice at weddings? Because it's a fertility ritual. It's associated with the crops and the marriage. The fertility of the marriage is going to generate goodness for the land. I mean, it's so poetic. It's so poetic.
Yeah. Even this description is is such a good description of an owl and the eagle. It's like the owl, he uses. I started to think about how like the sun is what we cannot directly look at. So it's like it's illuminating the world around us, but we cannot look at the sun. So it's like the noumena, we cannot actually get to it, but it's reflecting. And like the owl is our reflection on how we get this knowledge and how we light up the world from that knowledge that we got from the outside world.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so I
We're
like that.
reflecting on it. Yeah. We're kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, we're owls. The owls are not what they seem. All right. We got to speed run here. I'll be quick about this. Because to save time, so we don't have to go into this whole thing. I was going to have Jordan read this about the eagle. I looked this up as a long entry in the dictionary of symbols for penguin. But the long and short of it is the eagle is associated with Christ. It is a solar symbol. It is also associated with Jesus. And here's a passage from Psalms 103:5. Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles. So the eagle is a resurrection figure associated with the sun. So that gets into the Apollo and solar aspect of Christ in the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. If we can go to 520.
It's also interesting, though, that eagles are vultures. But we do not culturally perceive them in the same lens at all.
Well, there might be something alchemical to that, where there's something that is something that is decaying, that is consumed, that is then soaring into the heavens. I imagine if we dig deeper into it, there's the entry for eagle is like 4 pages long in this, and I only had time to take a snapshot of the general gist of it all, but it's there. Okay, we talked about Walter Cronkite. Did we talk about Walter Cronkite last time? We talked. This got me thinking about the connections between. We talked a little bit about the connections between Trinity and Apollo, and Walter Cronkite being a bridge, because not only did he narrate the Apollo missions for the majority of the public, because he was the most trusted man in news. We talked about last time how he's also the voice of the Bohemian Grove owl, and the Manhattan Project was hatched at the Bohemian Grove. Looking at that owl symbolism, if this sort of owl tag, I mean, to be honest, Cronkite actually looks a little like an owl to me. Like, thinking about the owl symbolism as being this mediator of the knowledge from the moon kind of makes a little bit more sense to me, and it unites these two events, the fall and the restoration of Eden on the moon. But even in the CBS logo, the CBS logo was also associated with all the Walter Cronkite transmissions about Apollo, where he would interview Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein and all the leading figures in this industry. It in itself, it appears to be a type of mandorla. It appears that the CBS logo is not unlike what we looked at in the Pope's hall. Now, do I think that this was intentional? Absolutely not. Like, I think the story, I sent this in the chat. The story is that this logo was derived from I forget his name. He this logo maker, they needed a new logo for CBS. It was too boring. And he saw these hex, I guess they're called hex symbols. They're actually on like Amish barns in like Pennsylvania and stuff like that, which is super strange because you don't think about them putting up hex symbols, like warding off, like evil, to ward off the evil eye or whatnot. And so he adapted it for CBS. And you see like what could be like the Earth or a mandala or something like that coming out of the Vesica Pisces. It's tilted. Is this a stretch? I don't know. But clearly, there's something about the celestial bodies that CBS is employing here, not only by having Cronkite associated with all the Apollo missions, but even on the CBS This Morning stuff, they associate their logo with this sun symbolism. So I'm not saying anybody there is trying to do this. I think this is completely just the arrangement of the universe manifesting itself. But I think when we look at that owl symbolism and think about Cronkite associated with the Bohemian Grove owl, and he being kind of a priest of the moon, and the owl being a lunar symbol, I think some things start to fall into place. Okay. And Jordan's got to go. Let's wrap this up with the final one. This
pretty
is
crazy stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. I don't think that's a proof. It's interesting. I don't think it's a proof, but it is interesting. This is the guy, Samuel Onveor. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name, but he was pretty convinced that the age of Aquarius began on February 4th, 1962. I'm just going to read this so we can understand why he thought that. On February 4th through 5th of 1962, an extraordinarily rare astronomical alignment took place in which nearly all the major bodies of the solar system, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, along with Uranus and Neptune, were clustered tightly together within about 16 to 17 degrees of Aquarius, forming one of the most concentrated planetary stelliums of the century. This already exceptional configuration coincided with a total solar eclipse visible over India and parts of Asia, heightening its dramatic impact. Although astronomically harmless, the event electrified astrologers, mystics, and New Age thinkers because it seemed symbolically charged, a massing of planets in the sign associated with revolution, science, and collective consciousness. Figures like Samuel Onveor interpreted it as the literal celestial marker inaugurating the age of Aquarius, a shift into a new epoch of human spirituality, technological awakenings, and global transformation. While astronomers viewed it simply as a rare but natural alignment, its symbolic potency, sun and moon eclipsing all classical planets crowded into Aquarius, made it a cultural and mythic touchstone for those anticipating a new era. I do not know how rare this sign is. It's rare. I don't know if it's like once in a million years. And is that more rare than other alignments? It seems like kind of a big deal to me if all the planets are in Aquarius at the same time during eclipses. But I'll yield to Jordan to close this out. I don't know if you have anything to say about the astrological arrangement, but it seemed, hey, if the age of Aquarius started in 62 at this event, that sounds pretty good to me. That does line up with the moon speech and the inauguration of the 60s and etc.
I don't think we can do this justice in a few minutes. But yeah, it's super fascinating at minimum. You know, even in Jung's interpretation, we are certainly in the age where things are dissolving. That has continued. It's only amplified. I think the next couple of years are going to be insane. But yeah.
Ostic, you want to close it out?
This is pretty interesting. I mean, you talked about everything coming out. I think the Beatles were still in, and they're coming back from Hamburg. They were going to start playing. They were going to record their new album just in a few days. It's an interesting time, and I think everyone associates 60s. Like looking back, everyone has an idea of what the 60s in American culture were like. Everybody, they can simply identify a time. It does not happen with everything. It does not happen with the 30s. They are not as recognizable as the 60s were. So it's not that people. So you know what I'm talking about. It has a very mythological image in our minds that is very tangible and that is very accessible, and it keeps repeating itself. Even today, even yesterday, Beatles re-released the new old albums in the anthology. So it's like it keeps living and living and living. So
yep, it does.
That's a good time.
All right, fantastic job, guys. We got to get off here so Jordan can go to her meeting. See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, this was a good